Welcome to the RPE Masterclass. Today we're going to be going over what RPE is, what it stands for, the scale used for RPE, how it can benefit increasing muscle mass and strength, how it can help with auto-regulation and what auto-regulation is, and just why it's a useful tool to incorporate into your strength training and muscle building workouts. So RPE sounds technical, but it's really not. It's actually very simple. It stands for rating of perceived exertion, and it's just a scale to use to understand how hard you're working during an exercise set. There is also an RPE scale for cardiovascular training, but that's not what we're going to be covering today. It is slightly different for vascular training. We're only going to be using it as it applies to strength training, hypertrophy training, which is muscle building, mobility work, rehab work, really anything with weights or body weight applies too, but just nothing in the cardiovascular world. So RPE is a self-assessment tool, right? So you don't have to do a checklist for this. You don't have to fill out a form. It can be useful to include the numbers if you are tracking your exercises and your weights, which you should be on a booklet or in an app. You can include an RPE number, but there's no specialized software or anything for it. It's really a self-assessment that you can even use in your head. Right? So don't think that anything special needs to be applied or to be bought to start using this and to start benefiting from it. Here's an example of the RPE chart. So as you can see here, it's just going through a variety of different exertion levels and relaying that to a number, right? So 1 to 4 is very light. You could do a ton more reps. It's very easy. This would really only be applied to warm-ups or rehab work, maybe mobility work. Generally, for muscle building and strength building, we're going to be in the 6 to the 9 range. So this gives you some idea of how many more reps you would be able to do if you were at a 7, an 8, and 9. And then when we get to the higher echelon of things, that's used generally for advanced hypertrophy training later in a phase for more advanced lifters. It could be incorporated sometimes even as a beginner or intermediate. There's nothing bad about it, right? It's not like we should never go to 9.5 or 10, but it does make us a lot more fatigued because of the energy that we use to complete a very challenging rep, right? So this scale is very useful. Come back to it. It can help to have this maybe on your phone if you're using an app to train, or have it in your workout book. So why is RPE important? Why should we even be using it? It's a tool of awareness. It can be hard to know how many more reps or how much more weight you should be doing in a set, especially when you're new to weight training. And this just really quickens the learning curve of understanding what effort level you should be using to get the outcome that you want. This is a skill, and like any skill, it takes time to learn. Practice is needed to get better at it, to have a better understanding of it, but it can be learned very quick and it should be utilized right away, right? RPE is really great to help you learn what weight you should use for the outcome you're after. Staying with the same weight month after month is not a great way to progress. If you've been in the gym for a while, you've probably seen those people, and not to hate at them at all. It's great that they're going to the gym, but just using the same weight for the same reps month after month after month, this just means they're stagnated. They haven't improved at all. And it's not a great way to increase muscle mass or strength. On the conversely, it's not a great idea either to just haphazardly increase weight every session, because you're going to become very fatigued very quickly, and potentially you're going to increase the likelihood of injury. Right? So RPE is a great middle ground to use to know when you're ready to increase weights or the reps you're doing, How can RPE be used to help us build more muscle and increase our strength? We need to improve over time in order to build muscle or strength. I know that sounds very obvious, but there needs to be a progression in order to have more muscle put on our body and to be stronger within our nervous systems and our muscular systems. Generally, this means months and years of time that it takes to really put on muscle mass and strength. That doesn't mean things don't happen quickly, but it's generally we get a lot of improvement very quickly when we first start out, and then things start to taper out, and the longer we're at it, the longer it takes to see improvements, right? But how do we gauge improvement? Like, how do we actually know we're improving outside of the first few weeks or months where it just feels like we're getting better every single session? The easiest way to gauge improvement is when heavier weights feel lighter than they used to. Weights are a very predictable way to gauge improvement. This doesn't mean you're forcing the weights to go up. Doesn't mean that you can do 30 pounds, but if you really pushed it, you can do 40. That's just increasing how hard you're working on that set. What I'm going to give you a good example on when you know you have improved, and this is more related to strength, but muscular size does relate to strength as well. But here's the example. So you've been doing 30 pounds on the dumbbell press for 8 reps. You're rating this as an RPE 8. So if you go back to the scale, RPE 8 means you could probably do 2 more reps with the same technique. You're doing this same exercise for a month on your program, and at the end of the month, you're doing 10 reps at 30 pounds and now rating it an RPE 9. So you could do 1 more rep. Have you actually improved? Well, you could argue maybe you were doing 8 reps before, you rated that an RPE 8. That means 2 more reps would be an RPE 10. Now you're doing 10 reps, it's RPE 9. So there might be some improvement, but it's hard to say. You could have just got better at the exercise. You could just be having a good day. You could just have, pushed it harder and miscalculated your rating, right? A more accurate way to know that you've actually improved is you switch your program for a while, you focus on other exercises, and then a few months later, you come back to the dumbbell press. You pick up the 30 pounds again, you do 8 reps, and this time you rate it as an RPE 6. Well, that's a drastic difference. It's hard to mess up that bad. If it was a 7.5, maybe you could say, well, it could just be a good day, or I could have just been inaccurate with my rating before. But a 6, that's a big difference. That means you could probably do 4 more reps. That's a pretty reliable sign of improvement there. So let's go into the term auto-regulation, what that means, why it's useful to know what that means, and why we should be changing our effort levels based on how we feel. So most of the time we feel pretty similar day to day. We feel good. We feel, maybe not overly energetic, just at a pretty steady energy rate. We don't feel all that tired either. This is kind of our baseline. Other days we're going to feel great. Sometimes it's hard to know why, but we feel like our strength is there. Everything is clicking. Things that were kind of hard before are now easy. And then on the inverse of that, we're going to have days where everything feels hard. You're just dragging your butt. You might have had a poor sleep. You might be really stressed at work and fighting with your significant other. And hopefully this doesn't happen often, but we're humans, so it's bound to happen. How does this relate to RPE? Well, on days you feel like you're dragging your butt, you shouldn't expect yourself to perform as well as your baseline, right? You're way more tired. There's just things going on within your mind and your body that just make everything feel difficult, and you shouldn't expect to perform at the same level as when things are going a bit smoother, right? You adjust RPE based on how you feel, not on an objective measure, right? This is called auto-regulation, right? So here's another example of how to think about auto-regulation practically. On an average day, 30 pounds for 8 reps on the dumbbell press might be rated as an RPE 8. On a bad day, the same setup, 30 pounds for 8 reps, might be an RPE 10. Your program says to go to an RPE 8, not 10. That means the 30-pound weights are too heavy for the day, and you should go down in weight. This doesn't mean you have lost strength. This is just the reality of day-to-day changes with being a human. Again, most of the time it's going to be pretty similar day to day, but sometimes we do have those days where we feel really good or fairly poor. Okay. Conversely, on a great day, the 30 pounders for 8 reps might be rated as an RPE 6. This doesn't mean you have got stronger, right? Again, it just means you're having a good day, but still go towards the RPE that's scheduled for you in your program. If it felt like a 6, you should then go up in weight or up in the reps or both to achieve the RPE 8 that's been scheduled in your program. How do you apply RPE to your training? So if you look at the scale above, once again, there's times to be at the very low end of the RPE. This is generally when we're doing something brand new, when we're rehabbing something, when we're looking to stimulate to connective tissue. There's a lot of reason to be in the middle. This is kind of our sweet zone for hypertrophy training and strength training. And then there are times to be right near the max, right? This is for testing one repetition max strength. This is when very advanced lifters are trying to build muscle and we need to go very close to failure. This is if we're trying to increase the workspace within a joint. There's reason to use all the numbers on the scale. It's not like only 6 to 8 is good and everything else is stupid. There's a reason for everything. We're just going to be using kind of 6 to 9 more often for hypertrophy training and strength training. How do you begin to use this as soon as this video is done? Remember, this is a skill and it needs to be practiced, right? So just practice, incorporate it as soon as possible. You're not going to be perfect at it to begin with. It's going to feel a little weird. It's going to feel like you're inaccurate, but you're just going to get better at it as time goes on. So just start using it. Know what failure is. So it can be really helpful to know what going to a 10 is like, but I would suggest choosing this on a very safe exercise. So this would be something like the standing bicep curl. Keep your technique the same throughout. Remember, we don't want momentum or using other body parts to help out, but actually go to what a 10 feels like. And then that's within your head and you can understand it helps to gauge every number down from that. That being said, going to a 10 on a bicep curl is much different than going to 10 on a squat. For some of you, going to 10 on a squat just isn't going to be appropriate. There's more risks involved with it. I wouldn't say it's dangerous, but you should have more experience under your belt. And what I'm saying is going to RPE 10 on one exercise doesn't relate to all other exercises. So it is very exercise dependent. And there's still use in knowing what an RPE 10 or going to failure is on a back squat. But again, you just have to be prepared for that. You should have a lot of experience with the lift, et cetera, et cetera. So like I just briefly mentioned above, not every exercise, not every set needs to be a 7, 8, or 9. There's reasons to go lower and there's reasons to go higher. So don't get caught into the trap of thinking anything out of the middle ground is stupid, right? So to wrap things up here, RPE is a useful framework to utilize and to understand when choosing the appropriate level of effort in an exercise, right? So it can really help guide our decisions, especially if we're new to lifting. It can really increase the rate at which we learn. It takes practice and consistency to have a better understanding of it. So start practicing right away. RPE is really used to understand how hard to push on an exercise and to help us guide what weights and how many reps we should be choosing. It's also very useful to guide auto regulation. So we have good days, we have bad days. Most of the time we're right in the middle, but on those good days or bad days, we adjust our effort levels based on, we adjust our reps and weight based on the RPE we're shooting for. So we're not the same every day. Don't train like you are. This can really help to manage longevity in a program and fatigue. There's times when it's appropriate to use low RPEs, times when it's appropriate to use high RPEs. Muscle and strength training will generally be right in the middle or the 6 to 9, but that doesn't mean everything else is stupid. So leaving this video, I encourage you to start using RPEs right away. Choose a safe exercise to do, like a bicep curl, and go to 10 just to know what it feels like. Then it really helps to gauge every number under that. And think of RPE as a useful tool to improve self-awareness, not just a hindrance to another thing to record, what's the use of it. It can really help guide our effort, make it more streamlined, especially on days where we feel a little bit different. Thanks.